Hey guys, how's it going? Hope you're doing well. My name is Crown, and today I'm going to read you some very interesting stories that I hope that you're gonna love. And now, without further ado, let's go!
I used to be a registered nurse at a busy hospital, but I don't work there anymore. The things I experienced there, like what I'm about to tell you, drove me away from hospital nursing altogether. The hospital where I worked had this ridiculous policy. If you called off work 3 incidents within a 12-month period, you'd get counseling, which was just corporate speak for being written up. What they never explained clearly was how they counted these incidents. I learned this the hard way a few months into my job. I caught some bug and called off sick one day. I had the next day scheduled off already, but my supervisor called, practically begging me to come in because they were short-staffed. Being the dedicated nurse I was, I dragged myself in, feeling terrible. Working while sick only made my condition worse, so I had to call off again the following day. During my next shift, the nursing director pulled me into her office. She told me that I now had 2 incidents on my record, not one, as I'd assumed. Apparently, if I had just stayed home both days instead of trying to help out, it would have counted as a single incident. She warned me that one more call-off would result in formal counseling. Since I was still on probation, this was a serious threat to my job security. About 2 months later, disaster struck. My entire family, my husband, our 4 kids, and I got severe food poisoning from a restaurant. It was absolute hell. We were all taking turns between the toilet and throwing up in trash cans. At one point, we were just sprawled across the bathroom floors because nobody had the energy to move far from the toilet. Around 10 p.m., knowing I couldn't possibly work the next morning, I called the hospital. Somehow I ended up speaking directly with the nursing director. When I explained my situation about the food poisoning affecting my entire family, the director coldly reminded me that this would count as my 3rd incident and result in counseling. When I tried to emphasize how sick we all were, she simply said that policy was policy and asked me to consider if I wanted this on my record during my probation period. I hung up the phone, frustrated and anxious. All night long, the sickness continued. I got absolutely no sleep. When I wasn't throwing up, I was cleaning up after one of my kids. There was vomit everywhere. When morning came, I made a terrible decision. I got dressed, somehow managed to drive myself to work, and clocked in. I tried to start my medication rounds, but within 20 minutes, I was violently throwing up at the nurse's station. I barely made it to the trash can. Then I had to run out of a patient's room mid-assessment to sprint to the bathroom. The charge nurse found me hunched over the toilet. She asked me what I was doing at work in my condition. When I explained about the director's warning and my probation status, she became upset. She complained that now she would have to find someone to cover my patients in the middle of a shift and said I should have just called off. When I reminded her about the potential effects, she pointed out that I had now exposed countless patients to whatever illness I had, calling the situation ridiculous. The charge nurse was furious, but not at me at the situation. Hospital policy dictated that I couldn't leave until another nurse officially took over my assignment. For the next 2 hours, I continued attempting to work while periodically throwing up in trash cans when I couldn't make it to the bathroom in time. I was weak, dehydrated, and probably a legitimate danger to my patients, but the system demanded I stay. Finally, another nurse arrived to take over, and I was officially sent home rather than having called off, which meant no write-up on my record. I ended up being off for 2 more days recovering from the food poisoning. My husband worked night shifts on the same floor. When he called in sick that same night with the identical food poisoning, nobody questioned him or threatened disciplinary action. Not a single eyebrow was raised. 3 months later, I handed in my resignation. I found a nursing position at a clinic with reasonable sick leave policies and managers who understood that coming to work contagious is worse than calling off. The hospital's inflexible policy didn't just hurt me, it put vulnerable patients at risk, all to maintain some arbitrary attendance metric that looked good on administrative reports. I work at a grocery store in a quiet part of town where we don't see much action from law enforcement. My job involves all the typical retail duties, but my least favorite task is collecting shopping carts from the parking lot, especially on hot days like today. One thing you should know about our store is that we have a clearly marked fire zone directly in front of the entrance. There are yellow lines painted on the pavement and multiple signs stating fire zone. No parking or stopping posted along the storefront. Despite this obvious warning, people still park there all the time, usually with the excuse that they're just grabbing a few things. As part of my unwritten job description, I try to warn these people before they head inside. I'm not trying to be a jerk. I genuinely don't want them to get a ticket or towed. My co-worker has been dating a bylaw officer for about 6 months now, and he occasionally swings by during his lunch breaks. When he does, he's not shy about writing tickets. When I see people park in the fire zone, I politely inform them of the potential effects. I tell them that it's a designated fire zone and warn that if a bylaw officer comes by, they could face fines or have their vehicle towed. Most people give me a look like they think I'm personally going to tow their car right then and there. I usually have to clarify that I'm simply giving them a heads up, and while they can park there if they choose, I won't be responsible if they get ticketed. Most people ignore my warning and park there anyway. Some appreciate the heads up while others respond rudely, questioning my intelligence and claiming they know exactly where they've parked. In those cases, I just apologize repeatedly until they walk away. Today was different. I was pushing a line of carts back to the store when this beat-up old Ford came tearing into the parking lot and screeched to a halt right in the middle of the fire zone. The driver was an older man, probably in his 70s, with a ring of hair around a bald spot and the sourest expression I've ever seen. Even before opening my mouth, I knew this might not go well, but it had become such a habit at this point. I approached the man and politely explained that he had parked in a fire zone, warning him about the possibility of being fined or towed if a bylaw officer came by while he was shopping. The old man scowled at me like I'd just insulted his entire family tree. He rudely questioned who I thought I was, dismissing my warning by claiming that bylaw officers never show up, and sarcastically asked if I was some kind of grocery police. I immediately switched to my customer service apology face and tried to explain that I wasn't trying to tell him what to do, but he cut me off before I could finish. The old man angrily interrupted, asserting that I had no authority over him. He made a crude comment about my mother and said that with his decades of driving experience, he would park wherever he pleased and I could do nothing about it. I attempted once more to explain my intentions, but was interrupted again as the man got right in my face. He jabbed his finger toward me and told me that I had no right to tell him anything. He ordered me to get out of his way and insulted my job, calling it worthless and minimum wage, and referred to my life as miserable and worthless. All I could manage was a quiet acknowledgement of his authority. He puffed out his chest like he'd just won some great victory, looked at me one more time, and stormed inside. As the door closed behind him, I noticed a familiar vehicle pulling into the lot. The bylaw officer who dates my co-worker. Talk about perfect timing. I practically sprinted over to him. The bylaw officer greeted me cheerfully, asking how my day was going. I responded that it had been terrible but was, hopefully, about to improve significantly. When he asked why, I pointed to the beat-up Ford and explained what had happened. I described how the old man had verbally abused me when I tried to warn him about parking in the fire zone, and asked if he would consider giving the man some karma. The bylaw officer grinned. He'd mentioned before how much he enjoyed holding entitled people accountable. He agreed to help and reassured me he could take care of it. He grabbed his ticket book and headed over to the illegally parked car. I went back to collecting cards but made sure to keep an eye on the situation. The old man must have taken his sweet time shopping because he emerged from the store just as the bylaw officer was placing the ticket under his windshield wiper. I was inside by then, but I could still hear the commotion through the automatic doors. The old man was screaming and cursing loud enough for the whole parking lot to hear, while the bylaw officer just stood there explaining the ticket process and the appeals procedure. After a few minutes of this one-sided shouting match, the bylaw officer headed inside to visit my co-worker. As he passed me on his way in, I jokingly offered to buy him a case of his preferred drink as a thank you, saying I'd have it waiting in the cooler the following week. He just laughed, shook his head, and continued on his way. It wasn't much, just a $150 fine, but seeing that angry old man get exactly what I'd warned him about felt like justice to me. I'm a dog person. My family had at least 2 dogs at any given time growing up, so when I moved into my own place, getting a dog became my top priority. After months of research and saving up, I brought home an adorable English bulldog puppy. He instantly became my best friend and daily companion. I work from home, which means I can take him for walks whenever we both need a break from being cooped up inside. There's a small park near my apartment that's perfect for our daily strolls. It's usually quiet with just a few other dog walkers or joggers passing by. My bulldog isn't the most energetic dog, but he enjoys the fresh air and occasional socializing with other dogs. Earlier today, what should have been our normal, peaceful walk turned into something completely unexpected. We were just making our usual loop around the park when I noticed a woman and her son, who looked about 10 years old, watching us from a nearby bench. Before I could even register what was happening, the kid jumped up and came running full speed toward my dog. Without any warning or asking permission, he dropped to his knees and started aggressively petting, more like squeezing my bulldog. His mother just stood there, not saying a word about her son's behavior. Now, I don't usually mind when people want to pet my dog. He's a gorgeous English bulldog with that adorable squishy face that people can't resist. He gets plenty of attention when we're out, especially from children. But this kid came charging at us without asking and was handling my dog pretty roughly. Plus, with COVID still being a concern, I wasn't comfortable with a stranger touching my dog without permission. I gently pulled my dog back and told the boy that my dog doesn't like to be pet. The mother finally approached us and started asking typical dog owner questions. She asked how old my dog was, and I simply told her he was 3 years old. Then she asked for his name, which I politely shared with her. She seemed nice enough at first, smiling and nodding as I answered. Then her expression changed. The woman suddenly asked me how much I wanted for my dog. I awkwardly laughed, thinking she was joking, and explained that my dog wasn't for sale. She persisted and offered me 100 euros for him. I was completely taken aback. My family and I had gotten him from a reputable breeder, and he had cost significantly more than that. But price wasn't even the point. He was my companion, not a product. I declined her offer again, making it clear that he wasn't for sale at any price. The woman then started pleading with me, explaining that her son had been very sad at home doing nothing all day and that a dog would really cheer him up. I shook my head and told her that while I understood her situation, this was my dog and he was part of my family. She then pointed out how much my dog seemed to like them, suggesting that he appeared to prefer them over me. She wasn't wrong about one thing. My bulldog was excitedly sniffing around them. He always gets overly enthusiastic around new people, much more animated than he is with me after 3 years together. I explained to her that my dog simply gets excited meeting new people, but that doesn't mean he's for sale. I could see the mother's face getting redder by the second. Her jaw was clenched, and she kept looking between me and her son, who was now pouting dramatically. I politely told them that we should get going and wished them a nice day. I tried to walk past them to continue our route, but as we passed, my dog suddenly lunged toward the kid, not aggressively, just playfully trying to get more attention. He loves children and always wants to play with them. I immediately pulled him back on his leash, so he didn't even get close to the boy, but the kid screamed anyway. The mother yanked her son backward and started shouting for help, claiming that my dog had attacked her son. Her screams caught the attention of everyone in the vicinity, including a security guard from the office building adjacent to the park. He quickly jogged over to us. The security guard asked what was happening. The mother told him that my dangerous dog had just attacked her son and tried to bite him. She demanded that my dog be taken away immediately. She was practically spitting as she yelled, pointing accusingly at my bulldog, who was now sitting calmly by my side, tongue lolling out, completely oblivious to the drama. The woman also accused me of not wearing a mask, claiming it was a crime, and said that I had deliberately coughed on her son. I hadn't coughed at all, and while I wasn't wearing a mask for my quick 5-minute walk where I rarely encounter anyone up close, I certainly wouldn't have approached anyone without one if I needed to interact. The security guard asked me if these accusations were true. I explained that I was simply walking my dog when they approached us. I described how the boy had started petting my dog without permission, and then the mother had tried to buy my dog from me. I told him that when I refused and tried to leave, my dog got excited and jumped a little, but I pulled him back immediately. I emphasized that my dog never touched the boy, and I certainly didn't cough on anyone. The security guard looked between us, then down at my peaceful bulldog. He told the woman that he didn't see any evidence of an attack and pointed out that my dog seemed perfectly calm. The mother became indignant, asking if he was calling her a liar and claiming her son was traumatized. She demanded to speak to his supervisor. The security guard explained that he was just there to maintain safety in the area, and since there was no immediate danger, we were both free to go about our day. The woman said this was unacceptable and threatened to report the security guard as well. He welcomed her to do that, then wished us all a good day. He nodded at me and walked back to his post. The woman looked at me, muttering something under her breath before grabbing her son's hand and storming off in the opposite direction. My bulldog looked up at me, seemingly confused by the whole situation. I gave him a pat on the head, and we continued our walk, though I kept looking over my shoulder to make sure the mother wasn't following us. The nerve of some people, trying to buy someone's dog right off the street and then making false accusations when they don't get their way. Needless to say, we're taking a different route for our walks from now on. I've been going to my church faithfully for over 24 years, so I know the rules inside and out. About 20 years ago, we built our new building with a kitchen that has a simple policy. If you're a member and use it, clean up after yourself and replace any supplies you use in high volume. Then there's the cleaning guy. He volunteered to clean our two main buildings, so he got keys to every door except staff offices. Though not a staff member, he acts like those keys make him the church's big boss. He's always saying things about how the pastor personally gave him those keys, as if that grants him special powers. I usually stay quiet when people act foolish, but two things set me off. Don't mess with my family or my friends. One Sunday, after visiting my girlfriend's church, I grabbed a pizza for my family. On the way back, I realized I forgot plates, so I planned to get some from our church kitchen. When I arrived, I put the pizza in the dining area where my mom, sister, and nephew were waiting. As I headed to the kitchen, I saw the cleaning guy walking out. I tried to catch the door but missed. I asked him to open the kitchen so I could get plates. He ignored my question and asked who was cooking in there. I explained I had just arrived and repeated my request. He refused, claiming he didn't know if I was allowed in. I told him I definitely was allowed and asked again. He refused again. I suggested he could get the plates for me, but he insisted I needed the pastor's assistant's permission. I muttered that he was an idiot and told my mom what happened. She suggested I check her office for plates. In her office, which requires a code to enter, the cleaning guy appeared at the window and demanded to know what I was doing. I explained my mom gave me permission. He accused me of having an attitude, and I told him he was being ridiculous and that I wouldn't have needed to come to the office if he'd just opened the kitchen door. When he started his usual line about having keys, I lost my temper and told him nobody cared about his precious keys. He threatened to call the pastor's assistant, and I dismissed him. Unable to find plates, we used coffee filters instead. As we ate our pizza, the cleaning guy returned to announce he'd spoken with the pastor's assistant. I told him I didn't care, but he warned I'd be in trouble at a meeting that night. I again told him to leave me alone, and he threatened that I wouldn't be doing any ministries after this. I left the room but then heard him yelling at my mom. She told him not to bring her into this or yell at her. Something snapped in me. I rushed back in and shouted that if he ever spoke to my mother like that again, I would break every bone in his body. When he tried to respond, I told him to shut up and leave before I did something I'd regret. He ran out faster than I'd ever seen anyone move. My sister was shocked, having never heard me speak that way. I apologized to her and we left. Later, the cleaning guy called my mom crying, afraid I'd attack him that night. My mom assured him I wasn't like that and would calm down. He said he didn't understand my reaction. My mom explained that he wouldn't leave me alone, threatened my ministries, and then verbally attacked her. He denied attacking her since he hadn't touched her, but my mom clarified that yelling at her felt like an attack to me, and my dad had always taught us boys to defend our mom. After that day, the cleaning guy never pulled his power trips with us again. And now we have reached the end of today's stories. Thank you for watching, and see you next time.